the gist of it was to kind of work in from the northwest corner, working in the southeast direction, in order to stay away from Middleton Center Phase 3 as long as possible, in order to give more time for Phase 3 to get wrapped up, just to not have conflicting construction activity, maybe truck traffic along Parmenter while we're under construction and things like that. And so that's kind of how we landed on this sequence. And so the biggest or the most time consuming construction activity is going to be in the phases 1, 2, and 3, the green, orange, and yellow. And then the blue and purple areas were just kind of pavement replacement areas that were added on kind of later on during design based on city feedback. And so we're just kind of fitting those in as we pave the adjacent kind of reconstruction areas. We're going to be paving those small kind of resurfacing areas. But we will have, itemized, special provisions in the contract to have the contractor, like you mentioned, come in and mobilize 2 separate times for the binder course. So the green and blue area will be, put binder down before they move on to Parmenter Street. And then those areas will have binder pavement put on in a second mobilization. And then the surface paving will all take place at once then.
Right. And I think too, it's important to note that in the construction plans, the staging calls for preserving access across intersections and 2 driveways whenever feasible. And sidewalks will remain open throughout, crosswalks, sidewalks open throughout. So people can access side streets whenever there's not excavation directly blocking it. And that's a roving operation. So just because something is colored yellow doesn't mean the whole thing's torn up all the time. It's just that that's the zone actively being worked on.
Correct. Yeah.
And I guess to add to that, with the green, the orange, and the yellow phases, part of the reason for that revamp was that we were only affecting 1 intersection at a time. That would allow better traffic flow.
That's a good add. Yeah, exactly. So that's something we talked about too, trying to keep as much cross traffic and through traffic open as long as is reasonable. So, so if there's nothing else about plan approval, I think maybe we could take that as one motion and then timing as a separate recommendation to the council.
Is there a motion for plan approval?
This is Susan. I move approval.
I'm still interested in hearing timing issues. Is that a separate topic?
It really is. At some point, we'll have plans that are ready for bidding, whether we bid them now or bid them later. I think part of our goal is to just make sure that this is what we want to build.
Then I will second Susan's motion to approve this plan.
Sorry, really quick. This is just Jen. I'm one of the business owners in downtown for a front-facing business. I know Andrea is also on the call, and Jess, I think I saw as well. There was some feedback. We did look at the plans. I know there was some feedback on the phases, whether it's, I'm sure there's been a lot of time already going through this, and everything has a reason. So, but we did have a feedback on the 2 phases on Parmenter. So maybe you want to hear about that as well before. I don't know how this all works, but I just wanted to interject and let you know that.
I think maybe this would, with Don's permission, be a good time to hear about that. Yeah, I hadn't previously heard that.
That would be fine.
Yeah, okay. So go ahead, Jen. What's your input on the phasing/staging plan?
Well, Andrea actually has, I'm a business owner, part of the DMBA, part of the board, but as a board, we've come together, and Andrea actually has a really good recap. And then based on that, just a few questions about the staging and potentially the Stone Horse Green as well, because it's all kind of tied in together in our minds. So.
Okay.
All right. I can take it away and share the feedback from the DMBA. First, we appreciate the opportunity to share our feedback. As a business association, we are all very supportive of this project because we understand the importance of making sure that the roads and the water mains and everything, the infrastructure is in place to support us as we try and grow and continue to build on the strength of downtown Middleton. But road work right now, very different from where we were when we all got together and looked at these plans back in October of 2019. You know, lots changed, and coming on the heels, while still living through a pandemic, this plan just in total provides huge hurdles for all of the businesses downtown, regardless of the timing or the staging, quite frankly, whether it's 2021 or 2022. So if I go back and say, where were we in September of 2020? It was agreed, let's work on the plan and then reconvene now to see what more do we know to come up with what's the recommendation. Do we want to move forward and now or hold off till 2022? What we talked about is a board of the DMBA, and we reached out to quite a few of the businesses. This is the feedback that we got. So what do we know? We know that this pandemic will be with us through at least the first half of 2021. I just heard a report on the news tonight that the governor is not thinking that vaccines will be widespread until mid-year. All of that together, the status of the pandemic means that outdoor access, as soon as the weather turns nice, is going to be critical for business survival across all of the sectors of our business. And by sectors, I mean our restaurants, our retailers, and all of the service providers, the workout places, the salons, the financial services, just all of the businesses. Outside access is going to be critical for us. And we know that customers are going to be eager to be able to get back outdoors again as well. And our thinking is that the CDC and public health will continue to discourage and limit indoor gatherings, which means there will be even more pressure then on businesses to be able to do things outdoors to provide safety, not just for customers, but also as employers for our workforce. So that's point one. That's one thing that we know. Second thing we know is that we are all reeling from the past year, with reports of business down anywhere from 40 to 75% across the range of businesses that we get feedback from. And while some of our businesses experienced nice holiday sales in the month of December specifically, it was not nearly enough to offset the things that we've experienced over the rest of the year. So despite our pivots to online order systems, curbside carryout, private shopping appointments, and many other creative changes to business models that we've all scrambled to put in place, the outlook for the first half of the year for most of our businesses, quite honestly, is grim. We know that Q1 in general is a slow period, and even with that, many of our businesses are forecasting sales at 25 to 30% of typical volume, which again is then putting more pressure on Q2 to offer some kind of a rebound with outdoor opportunities. The third thing we know is that there's been some financial relief that's come the way of many of our businesses in 2020 and the promise of more to come in 2021. Between MERL, the Wisconsin We're All In grants, the new round of PPP has just been announced and is coming out. There's a Dane County grant, which has just been announced. So these programs all have varying degrees of relevance and applicability across the range of our businesses, but will be able to help some businesses at least weather part of the storm getting through 2021. So that's what we know since we met in September when it was agreed, let's reconvene in January. One thing we don't know is the timing of Stone Horse Green. And while we are all really enthusiastic about this project, particularly after seeing the tremendous opportunity and success we had with that outdoor space in 2020, there is concern about the additional outdoor space during its build-out. So how extensive will the disruption be in terms of road closures, loss of parking, What's the relationship of the Stonehorse Green project to this roadwork project, i.e., do they happen sequentially? Do they happen concurrently? There's just a lot that we don't know, and which may affect our overall point of view one way or the other. So with all of that as backdrop, we really had mixed feedback from the businesses on should we say let's go forward in 2021 or should we hold off to 2022? And in part, it did seem to vary by business sector, although there were some other business factors that drove the feedback as well. So some businesses very strongly want this project pushed out to 2022. These tend to be the businesses that are more reliant on daytime business or weekday business, or those who have already invested significant amounts of money upfront already for inventory for their spring and summer selling seasons. The prevailing thought with this group is this would just be a kick in the gut. We're at the bottom of the barrel. This is another punch I'm not sure we can take. And I think Jen did a nice job in your agenda packet. I think you have some more detail around that from Jen, and she has some other quotes from other retailers who really share that perspective. On the other hand, we have businesses who are okay if we proceed in 2021. These tend to be the businesses that have evening hours or weekend hours or aren't the adjacent front-facing businesses right on the construction route. Or those who don't have to make big advanced commitments to inventory. In my business, as an example, I have a little bit tighter control on as business ebbs and flows. I bring food in the back door to send out the front door on a much tighter basis and have more control over my cost exposure. Not all businesses are in that position. So while nobody is really excited about taking on this project as we're all reeling from COVID, the prevailing thought with this set of businesses is just get this over with. While business is already down, we're at reduced capacity. We know we will continue to be at reduced capacity in 2021. We're banking on the fact that customers are just going to be excited to get out and are eager to support us, and they'll be willing to overlook the traffic and roadwork disruption, assuming we have sufficient marketing support to tell them that we're all here and open and how to get around. So the thought is it'll be tough in 2021, but we'll be set up for strong 2022 with no constraints, again, depending on the Stonehorse Green plan. But what's common across all of the businesses, regardless of whether they won in 2022 or 2021, is that outdoor business really is critical this year. So some ideas came up, and I'll just throw them out. The first is, can roadwork be pushed off to 2023 or beyond? Does it have to happen in the next 2 years? We really need time for our businesses to rebound. Many of us have our own personal financial resources tied up in this, and we're at great risk, not just with our business, but with personal investment. We just need time to rebound. So is 2023 or beyond an option? Second idea came up, is it possible that roadwork could be scheduled around our critical outdoor season, i.e. moved to February, March, April, or some other time frame rather than in the peak May, June, July timeframe? Third idea came up, is it possible to shorten the duration? Instead of doing 12 weeks with 8 weeks of that across 2 phases on Parmenter, can 2 crews be hired on Parmenter and work concurrently on those 2 blocks to shorten 8 weeks to 4 weeks? You know, some of these ideas, I am grateful that you took to heart the feedback from October of 2019. These intersections have to be kept open. We have to have street access, but you know, a lot has changed in our world since then. And so maybe some of those considerations have a little flex in them if necessary to do things like take on all of Parmenter at once and shorten that overall duration. Just a thought. The next idea came up, and that's not necessarily with this group, but it's very relevant. And that is, can the Stonehorse Green plan pivot? The original plan is really exciting, but it was developed in a pre-COVID world. And now that we have experience on what worked well, we know that the community loved that space. They loved seating for dining and hanging out. They loved the stage for music. And we know what needs to be added. It needs electricity, it needs restroom facilities. So how can this plan pivot to get some of these things added quickly with minimal disruption? Can the initial work on that start later this year, October, November, and then continue concurrent with roadwork if roadwork in 2022 is more February, March, April, again, outside of the summer timeframe, so we all have a chance to rebound. And then that sets us up for a grand unveiling in summer 2022. So just some thoughts. In addition to that, we have a number of other considerations that we would like thought about, many of which already have, but we just want to make sure get written into the plan. Work hours ending at 5 p.m. and not on weekends, so that the businesses that have evening business, restaurants in particular with outdoor dining where it's going to be critical, that that can go on as minimally disruptive as possible for outdoor diners. We're going to ask for help on signage so that the road closed signs include very, very strict, very visible that all businesses are open, that there's very clear signage directing people to the available parking. So I think there's work around signage that we'd love to work on with you. We're going to ask that in the bidding documents you include that construction workers have to park away from downtown. There are options for parking, in the blocks away from downtown to keep it open for customer parking. We'd like to request that a communication point person is identified to facilitate communication with us regarding utility shutoffs, intersection shutoffs, et cetera. I know that there's a 72-hour notice period cited. If it's possible for that to be increased, many of our businesses with the shift to online purchasing and curbside carryout, we're booking orders further out than 72 hours. And so 72 hours, I know there's a balancing act here, but some of our customers already are planning more than 72 hours out to come to us, and we have to be able to fulfill those orders in advance. Hard to do if water shut down in a restaurant or access to a retailer is cut off. Pedestrian and customer friendly accommodations with sidewalks being maintained, maybe fencing, blocking sidewalk, the ugliness of a road under construction if there are sidewalk tables right up adjacent to it. Additional financial resources, including CDA marketing funding to help us, other grant opportunities from the city. And then just a number of other opportunities we'd love to work with the city on to help us as we continue to find sidewalk sales outside, sidewalk cafe seating, pop-up opportunities away from the front-facing businesses to elsewhere in downtown Middleton. Can license fees be waived? Can designated curbside carryout zones be established with signage? Can we have support in getting pop-up sites going in the TAP? Just lots of opportunities for us as we try to work with this plan and maximize what we need from outdoor space to keep our businesses going. So that's a lot, but that was the feedback from a nice broad cross-section of the businesses downtown. I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has, and I'm more than happy to forward this to you. A lot of this was coming in today as we were preparing, so I'm happy to forward this to you for the record.
I think it would be handy if you could email to me a copy of those notes that you've prepared. I think some of them are within the purview of the plans and specs. Some of them are policy issues well beyond the Public Works Committee.
Yeah.
And,
but
so
it takes a village.
Yeah, right. So things like ending a workday at 5 and not working on weekends, for the most part anyway. We have contemplated trying to do paving at night because when a lot of trucks come in and want to get something done, that doesn't necessarily work with your customer base in the middle of the day. We realize that stacking up trucks is going to be disruptive, but after dinner maybe is a better time to take that on than in the middle of the day. So other than that, I think some of those work hour restrictions would be within the policy directive of Public Works and putting it into the specs.
And we'd be happy to give more feedback from across the restaurants on what is the right time, what does after dinner mean?
Sure.
Again, we would have a range of what that means, but there's still a fair amount of dinner up until about 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Tom, what's in the specs right now? Do you know? I think our default is 6 o'clock.
Right. As of right now, we haven't modified, Sean, what the current city ordinance work hours are.
Okay.
So we have some placeholder items on there that we need some direction on before we button things up. But
okay.
Sean, at the October, November meeting, one of the things that we had talked about in regards to paving was the expense of having the trucks at night. But would it be possible to start at 3 or 4 in the morning? They're more likely to start early than they are to come in at, say, 10, 11 o'clock at night. If that's a possibility that we could pay from 3 or 4 a.m. till 8 or 9 a.m., would that work for the business owners?
With the exception of the coffee shops and then maybe some of the gyms, it probably would work better for more of the businesses.
Okay, that's a good thought, Sean.
As for Sean, either Sean, I guess it seems like a lot of the comments kind of revolve around the Stone Horse Green and the schedule, that goes along with that. I guess the city, do you know exactly kind of what's going on with the schedule on that project?
Do you want to
Go
take
ahead,
that?
Sean.
I had just reached out to Abby Attoon about Stone Horse Green. Her response to me, I'm sorry, bear with me here. Her response was, the city council has committed $1 million towards the project, and we need to privately fundraise $600,000. We have raised about $35,000. It is doubtful that we would be able to raise $565,000 in the next 50 days. So the project will probably be put off for 2021. So it sounds to me like Stone Horse Green would not move forward this year.
As a business owner here, I mean, I guess my question is it possible, how long is it possible to delay this road construction? Because again, Andrea summed it up perfectly at the beginning. We are all for this road construction to get done at some point. We understand it's necessary. We understand it's gonna give us the downtown, support and infrastructure. But I mean, we are just, as a retailer with 2 storefronts downtown, I am just drowning after COVID. And there's no way that layering on road construction this summer, when I'm just anxious to put some racks out and open up my doors, because that makes a huge difference right now. And every single curbside pickup counts. So how long is it even possible? Can we, I don't know if this is, I don't know, the feedback, like, can it be delayed more? I know all of this infrastructure is coming up from phase 3 of Middleton Center, and that's pushing it too, but how long could it go?
That's a good question, Jen. I don't have a definitive answer, but from a technical perspective, the nuts and bolts of actually doing this, I think it can be deferred. We run a risk of water service and water main breaks. It's a really old water main. We're going to continue to have rough pavement, but in the grand scheme of things, that's maybe not the biggest deal you're facing. And at some point, because this is a tax increment financed project, when the TIF window closes, the funding goes with it. I think that's still several years out. So if the project gets delayed, but not to the point that we'll lose our funding, I think the council may be open to that.
Yeah, because again, on a typical year as a retailer, who I need to make the point that I am very much reliant, again, having 2 storefronts in downtown Middleton, on the high foot traffic of daytime, customers. And, on a typical year, this is just a small drop in the bucket. We can figure it out. It's fine. This is not a typical year. I mean, it's when I started going around and talking to the other retailers, I mean, when I even mentioned road construction, I mean, it almost brings people to tears, thinking that they're just trying to get some more grants to just pay their employees or to bring in inventory. you know, and the fact that we're funding, or we're the government and things are trying to help small businesses by giving these grants and things. It's for getting through this COVID. We can't scrape any more off the bottom for anyone in a similar situation. And I think the vibrancy of the downtown and the diversity of the businesses is key for how magical the downtown is. And if we lose some of the retailers who've already invested so much and have really strong businesses in normal times, you know, every month counts, every day counts, every sale counts right now. And typical year we can spare a little. You know, I take a small hit and it's fine. But this year it hurts more coming from a retailer's perspective. Other businesses can kind of pivot a little bit more, but I wanted to share that.
So, and that obviously is a really big question with this project right now, the timing of it. I was just trying to separate those two a little bit to the degree possible to figure out, you know, is our design contract completed? Whether we put it on the shelf or put it out to bid, I just was hopeful of pursuing as a separate item right now. You know, one of the other ideas raised, Andrea, was, you know, can we put 2 crews on Parmenter Street? And to me, that feels really tight, that they just be banging into each other with staging and trucks and equipment. It's such a small work zone that by the time they get through the water main on one, they can do the services on the other. You know, but I just don't see that these little chunks are viable for having independent crews doing basically the same thing at the same time.
Or are there other ways that the amount of the duration could be shortened then to minimize the impact?
Well, that was a big part of why we broke it into this many pieces, so that any one piece would be effectively bite-sized before moving on to the next one. And the intention there was effectively to shorten it up as much as possible as a disruption, but still keep cross traffic able to get through to the degree possible. So if you can't use Hubbard, at least you could use Elmwood.
But that's with car traffic. And now as we're thinking about, again, the importance of business being able to get outside, whether it's people eating outside, whether it's people shopping outside at a sidewalk sale, being able to keep doors open, windows open for airflow, like all of these things that are really critical to us being able to work in this environment and even be able to hold, you know, even I'll be honest, with Long Table, even with the green and our patio and curbside carryout, I mean, we were lucky if we were operating at 40% of our typical volume last year. So outside is absolutely critical. It really is.
And Andrea, one of the things that Tom Stetzer and I talked about after the last meeting was how early could we get in and start this project. One of the reasons, whether it's this year or a later time, we would be bidding this in January with the hope that we would be breaking ground as early as possible in the year to try to minimize. This wouldn't be a June, July, August project. This would be I don't want to say a March, but you know, that mid-March to mid-April time to get started, weather permitting. It really
it always depends on frost.
I know that's the wild card, but you know, I know when Monroe Street had road work, which I lived through 10 months of that road work, which I'm grateful that this isn't anywhere near that scope. A lot of the initial work started unexpectedly in January, almost a month earlier than what some of the businesses were thinking. So that was more the utility work that started that early, and then the bulk of the work started sometime in February, I think. You know, they moved it up a little bit, but so, you know, just anything that can be done to shift it out of our key outdoor season is the idea. And then obviously I know there's a lot of constraints go into that, being that we're where we are with the weather.
Sure.
Sean, this is Carrie Scheffner. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. last time when we deferred it, did we approve design drawings or did we just put everything on hold?
We had a few things to direct Tom to do, which is why it's coming back now for plan approval with the intent of it being ready to either bid or put on a shelf. And then secondarily to come back and ask, now that we know a little bit more about where COVID is heading, what's the right timing that we could advise the council, not to make a decision, but to advise the council.
Okay. Yeah, it seems to me, and I don't know how the other committee members are thinking, but it seems like we should defer this if it's, I know that there's a risk of the water main, as we had talked about the last time we deferred it. But just given COVID and the year that we've had this last year, and likely, a lot of the same things are going to be occurring this spring and into the summer, it seems like we should defer is the way I'm thinking right now. But like you had said, Sean, perhaps we could approve the design, but then not put it out to bid at this time. That's where I'm leaning towards, at least. I don't know what the other committee members are thinking.
Yeah, just for the record, we do have.
Thinking the same thing.
Yeah, this is Don. We do have a motion and a second on the table for approval of the plans as they are. It does not approve the bidding, just the plans, so that Tom can take these plans, roll them up, put them on the shelf, and then come back in a year and say, okay, it's going to take, a couple $1,000 probably just to clean them up and get them back out to bid. Something to get them back out to bid. I don't want to put numbers in your head, Tom.
So Don, you're saying we should vote on this and then we can discuss timing.
I think we should vote on the plan approval because I haven't heard
Yes.
anything from the downtown residents and non-residents, but shopkeepers and shop owners that, hey, this is a problem with the plans. I think the plans are really in good shape. And I agree. This year is going to be another big problem. My fear is that when we come back to this in December of this year, they're going to say, we're just getting back on our feet. Please don't shut us down again. Can we delay it another year? And I do see that coming.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was the feedback from a good chunk of the businesses in favor of going forward with it now.
Yeah.
Unless it could be delayed to 2023 or beyond, which is what Jen was asking. Does it have to be done even in 2022? And then once we get back from the COVID and we're hopefully back with solid footing, the scope of this project, we all know it has to be done. So,
just interjecting though, I want to make it clear, 2022, everyone's hopes, despite whatever business you're in and whatever your job is that this vaccine helps us get back to somewhat a normal kind of whatever your normal is. And as a business, if I have the tool to be able to invite people in my doors and as many people as we can, that helps us tremendously during road construction. So if it was 2022, the hopes is that in 2021, there's a vaccine, my staff feels much better. I have some financial relief because we had a great holiday season. Even 2022, just takes so much pressure off. And I want to make that clear because it's 10 times better than doing it right now when we have no tools then. We can't, as a retailer, I can't take my stuff outside. If there's dust everywhere, I can't leave my door open. And then we can't invite people indoors. There's just no way to get through it. And it's hard.
Don, I see Kathy Olson, the alderman for District 1, has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to loop back with you, Sean Aldrud, about the time of the paving. We have to remember how many apartment dwellers we have down there, and at 3 a.m. it's not going to be a good time for paving. So we have to make sure we keep that in mind.
Yeah, we'll have to try to find a balance between the
right
and the property. Two things that I would want to mention is if we are deferring Stonehorse Green for 2021, that could potentially be going in 2022. If the business owners understand that if we do defer, we could potentially have two projects going on downtown at the same time. So I want to be open about that. I don't know what the future of Stonehorse Green is, but that would obviously be a potential. The other for Public Works Department is that with our 5-year plan, this is a big enough project that deferring is going to change the 5-year plan. From a staffing point, Sean would answer that better than myself, but pushing a project does have a ripple effect in that. So I just wanted you guys aware.
Don, I see Susan West has her hand up, and Dan Cody also.
Susan?
Go ahead, Susan.
Okay, in terms of the timing, I think City Council would be very much in favor of supporting what's best for the businesses there. And I'm saying this partly because we have just approved a loan program for the businesses where we borrowed money and we're loaning it to them at a exceedingly low interest rate. We want the businesses to succeed so that we don't have defaults on the loans. So that's one, I mean, that's just a very practical reason for trying to accommodate them. And I think in general, we want the businesses to succeed. Sean did bring up a problem in terms of the 5-year plan. Hopefully we wouldn't, I personally don't have a problem trying to accommodate the businesses, and I hope citizens wouldn't give us a hard time about changing the 5-year plan around considering COVID.
I think there are going to be some changes to the plan anyway. This would be one more to juggle, but it's solvable. That's not our biggest problem. It is an issue, but we'll work it out.
Yeah, I think anything we can do to help the businesses in terms of timing.
Yeah. Dan?
I was just thinking about comments I heard earlier where it was described that they're relying a lot more on, or some businesses are relying more on pickup, but other businesses still need the parking and the access to the store and so on. So I was wondering, is there something that, whenever this happens, is there something that we can do to maybe put some type of a pickup zone or something? So it might mean the food maybe need to be walked half a block or something like that. But it would enable the people that only intend to be there for a pickup to pass through quickly and have a stop and go point, leaving the other spaces available for people that would be spending more time downtown. Just some tool to help alleviate the pressure on when the construction happens. And then the other point I had is, if this is delayed, it seems like we'll be running a higher risk of some type of utility failure. Should that occur, we've basically made things worse, because now we'll have a repair and a street construction project that will have to occur within the time envelope that we have. Could there be, I don't know, do we know exactly where the mains are, and could some section of the road, if something broke in the yellow zone, could we just do that piece of the project or something? And if we're there tearing the whole thing up anyways, could that be looked at?
Probably not, because our own crew will have to fix brakes, but not rebuild a road.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Don, I see Robert Burke had his hand up next.
Robert, go ahead.
Hey, sorry, I had to figure out where the mute button was again. I agree with Susan that we want our downtown businesses to be successful. I think the Common Council would consider a delay. The thing that we are going to be up against, as Sean alluded to, is TIF District 3. I think it expires in like 2025 or 26.
That's
So,
correct.
so the money, the money will dry up, on a hard date. So we need to make sure that this project doesn't get pushed back too far. So I think what we're probably talking here is, I think 1 year is supportable to 2022, 2023 maybe pushing us pretty hard up against that hard stop, and that it may not be able to go that far, just so everybody's aware. But I do agree with Susan that we're going to try to do a lot to keep our downtown businesses going concerns, because it's much easier to keep people around than it is to try to rebuild after they're all gone. And we don't want to do that. So my personal belief is that this plan is good, and tonight we should vote to approve the plan, because that's kind of the engineering work that went into this. That engineering work was done. It's well done. I think it's a good plan. I think the timing thing is, as Sean said, a little bit of a separate issue, and that's for the Common Council to decide. But I think they would not be adverse to trying to keep it, keep everything moving forward with only maybe like a year delay. I think so. That's what I have to say.
I see that Michael's Galaxy S20. Is that Mike Davis?
It is. Thank you,
Has his
Sean.
hand up.
That's me. I just wanted to confirm what Robert said, that the TIF district expiration is the end of 25. So the furthest that this project could be deferred would be to 2025. I also wanted to comment that as things pick up for businesses in 22 and maybe even into 23, I think there's going to be reluctance on their part to see the road project going forward. I don't know that any one of these years is better than the other, but one thing that might be better for deferring, and we've talked about that before, is that it's probably better from a construction standpoint for Stonehorse Green to be completed prior to the road work, given the staging. I believe that's what you and the engineers have thought before, because we'll have more trucks going over new pavement if we did in reverse order of that.
Yeah, all things being equal, it's nice to get site work done and then road work.
Right.
All right. Andrea Van Nest has her hand up, Don.
Yes, I see.
I just wanted to follow up with a question in terms of the comment on emergency means. I remember that was talked about when we were all able to get together in person back in October of 2019, that was a concern. And I would just question, have there been any emergency made breaks since that time to try and, I know you can never predict what's likely to happen going forward, but it's been a couple of years now, or a year and a half, I guess now, since then. And so I don't know how big of a factor that needs to be in the decision to defer or not. And then I would also just say, when we talk deferral, again, just, deferring to when, with not just the year itself, but also when in the year. Q1 tends to be a slower time frame for businesses anyway, and at some point we'll be able to have businesses back indoors. And so being able to have them indoors in a lower season is better than having roads torn up when people aren't going to want to come sit outside or have the sidewalk sales and the other things that we've all been talking about. So it's not just the year, but when in the year, I think.
Yeah, and I would think keeping the focus on starting as early as possible is still in our best interest. So I don't see a plan change that way.
Perfect.
Yeah, I apologize. I can't find my hand raising button. So I just a lot of the construction process revolves around the asphalt and when they start making asphalt in the year. So, starting a project in January, you couldn't pave late February or March.
Mhm.
So that has a bit to do with it.
Yep.
Susan was next here. I saw her hand come up.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm hearing all sorts of, especially from the downtown people, variations in when certain groups would like things and when other groups would like things done at different times. I'm hoping that we've provided a lot of information, and maybe Sean could provide some more so that they could get together in the next month or so and give us a little more definitive times of when this project would be acceptable.
I
And in
think,
terms
Susan,
of staging Stonehorse Green too.
Susan, I think that's an excellent idea to approve the plans tonight for bidding, but then with a caveat that we'd revisit scheduling and timing in
Yeah.
a couple of months if we're going to delay it.
Maybe even in fall. I think, you know,
Yeah.
until we have a better handle on, you know, sure, vaccines are available, but until they're in people's arms, none of that matters. And frankly, we just don't know
Agree.
what's going on with that.
Yeah. Sean, you've been listening to me.
That's probably, I'm reading your yeah.
And then
Your
Jen
notes.
has her hand raised also.
Correct.
Yeah. So, you know, the point about Stonehorse Green too, as a business owner, I always look for tools that can get us through just kind of these bumps and jags that, you know, or these challenges that come our way. And in a blue sky situation, you know, if Stonehorse Green was complete before road construction, we can draw more people downtown that way. We can host events in the green. People will come out, they make their way downtown. They don't care about the construction going on then. The other thing too is just thinking from a fundraiser perspective, if we can draw as many people outside in a safe way this year, we potentially have a better opportunity to continue raising money as well, because people are becoming more and more attached to that space, particularly this year when they're going outside to eat and to spend their time with their families.
Don,
Okay, I
oddly
got my
enough, you
hand.
have your hand up.
Yeah, I do. So can we maybe call the question on the plans and then just defer the actual timing, assuming now the bulk of what I'm hearing is that everyone wants it delayed, at least who lives and works downtown, to revisit that in October again this year, when we know more about what's going on with vaccines and immunity, et cetera.
And we had intended to advise the council with a recommendation on timing. So I could see that as a separate motion to the council then. Because it's a TIF funded project and pertinent to businesses, I think it's appropriate to let all the elected officials weigh in on that.
So
That would be good, especially now, and then you'll also have a chance, Sean and Sean, to gather all the information that was presented tonight, look at it and see if there's anything that really needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
do you think our motion is good as is, or should we make a new motion?
Yeah,
I
I
think
made a
it's okay.
motion just to approve the plans.
Okay.
And I seconded that motion.
Correct.
Yeah, and it was just contingent upon some minor revisions per staff review. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Could I ask a question to the business owners, so that I'm going to be going back to Abby and talking to her about Stonehorse Green. It sounds to me like the business owners, in a perfect world, you'd say, let's build Stonehouse Green, finish that, and then do the road project. With neither one going, you know, this year, are your thoughts that we build Stonehorse Green potentially next year, and then later in 2022 do the road project after, putting us more into that busy season? Or which?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would like, if we could, rethink Stonehorse Green, modify the plan so that maybe some of it could get started late this year or early next year, because we need it open for the summer again next year. And then delay, I mean, when we say delay, I think at this point, what we all really want is delayed to 2023. I don't think we're talking about 2022. If it's possible to delay to 2023, I think that's what we would all really prefer, just because we're going to need time to get our feet back under us again. And for those of us who did take loans out through the Merle program, again, which we're grateful for, that's going to be one more debt that we're adding into our debt next year, debt repayment. Even at the attractive interest rate, it is still additional money added on to lots of other debts which have been stacking up. And so next year, not just from a customer visiting standpoint, but from a getting out underneath lots of debt which has been stacking up, 2022 is still going to be a pretty critical year. That's part of the reason why some of the businesses were like, let's just do it in 2021 and be done. So 2022 we can just get back on with it. So I think most of us would say, yeah.
What I would really like to suggest is that in terms of timing, we give you guys some time and some more information from city staff to really give us a better answer on what would be best for you.
In terms of what kind of information?
So you can take back to the businesses the options of like when Stonehorse Green is done,
Right.
you know, timing for when that's done, the different roads and that sort of thing.
Susan, I will just say we can certainly try to do that, and I hope we will. I think good communication will be helpful. We don't know when Stonehorse Green will have the money to start.
Yes.
And we don't know how that, I don't know that we will be able to wait for one project to be done to start another either.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, you know, like we've heard, it's all weather dependent. So everyone should take scheduling with a grain of salt here, because we will not be able to plan out exactly when things happen.
What I'm thinking that they can do is look at all of these different pieces of information and come up with a couple of options. So in case one being, if Stonehorse Green can be done this year, when would be a good time to do the roads? If Stonehorse Green can't be done, or we don't know when it might get done, what would be the best option? And I think staff can work with the businesses with that information.
Sean, how comfortable do you feel with that? Because I think we can try. I just think everybody has to keep in mind the vagaries of life after COVID-19 and weather, and when money will be available for certain projects and when asphalt will be available for certain projects. Says there's going to be a lot of variables here that we actually don't control very well. So I love the idea, Susan. Yeah. Just Sean, you tell me what confidence levels can you give to any type of planning document that you would create for Andrea and the downtown group?
Well, as we've talked about with our own 5-year plan, all of it is subject to change. And not just based on funding and staffing, but just lots of other stuff comes up. So I would say in a perfect world, we should not attempt construction of Stonehorse Green at the same time we're attempting to reconstruct the road. It should either be, 1A or 1B, either do Stonehorse Green first and the road second, or the road first and Stonehorse Green second. Sure. And which one doesn't really matter to me. In a perfect world, I would do the site first and the road second. But if the opportunity works out better to do it the other way, it's not a big deal. So until we know a little bit more, I'm hesitant even to try putting a plan together.
Yeah.
At this point, if we're talking about deferring it at least 1 year, we can decide again in fall.
Sure.
Is spring of 2022 looking okay, or should we push it to 23?
Right. And Andrea and others from the downtown Middleton group, be aware that Susan and I are both on council. We have definitely heard you. I hope that you will come back to not just Public Works, but come back to Common Council so that your voice can be heard by the whole Common Council as we decide this, because you're right, it sounds like there's a lot of, well, if we do this, then we could do this. But if this other thing happens, then that changes everybody's plans. And that sounds like that's true of you as well. And because I've heard that you would either like to push it off till 2023 or do it now. And obviously those are two very different options as well. So be part of the conversation as you already are, continue to do so. And Susan and I will do our best to bring everybody's concerns and hopes and plans to Common Council to speak for you as well.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
And I see, Don, that Jen has
I
her
see
hand
that
raised.
also. Jen?
Oh, sorry. I had that up. Really, when I was coming at it and appreciating all the information, I think Sean asked, if we did Stornhorse Green in spring, and then would we be okay with it happening in the fall? It's just for next year. It's just all so unknown. The only thing that we know as businesses are what we're facing right now with COVID, and it's just for a good solid handful of the businesses, this would just hurt really bad this year. So I think you guys definitely heard us with that. Not all the businesses feel that way, obviously, but a lot of our, customer front-facing businesses do feel that way, and that's what we know now. And then, so for me personally, I really appreciate you, if it's approving the plans and revisiting at the end of the year and seeing, can we push it out to 2023? When do we do Stonehorse Green? All of those conversations have a lot more context as we get through a little bit farther in past COVID. So, I really appreciate that as a business.
And then I see Jessica Regal also has a comment.
Jessica, you might be muted.
She is muted. There, no, we're not.
You'd think by now I could have figured out mute and unmute, but thank you for listening to us. It means a lot to know that you're continuing to take in account all of these things because they are crucial. The decisions are to our business. I just wondered, is there, in the ideal world, how long would this construction project take? Considering weather's okay and all of those pieces. Do we have a timeline from beginning to finish?
Contractors usually give us their best shot at trying to compress schedules because that's money out of their pocket if they're inefficient about this. Tom Stetzer, who's our consultant, has taken a stab at an overall ballpark estimate of 12 weeks start to finish. But again, a contractor really sets that because they'll try to get in and get out the best they can.
Yeah, Sean, that was our best guess, was about 3 months. And I guess, do you know for Stonehorse Green what the anticipated schedule may or may not be? I know that, I guess I could see a picture or a project of that scale with some of the amenities there, taking a good chunk of a construction season.
I would too.
Their estimate was 3 to 4 months, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my next question, so thank you.
Okay.
For the downtown businesses, once Abby has those funds available, we would have more flexibility with scheduling. But until then, to talk about Stonehorse Green seems pretty pie in the sky.
Well, and that's why I have reached out to Kevin Mahaney, and I know he reached out to Abby on our conversation just to say, can some of that plan pivot? There's great potential, but we've learned a lot about how space gets used. And so maybe the scale or scope could maybe change and take some pressure off the fundraising, and maybe things could get started on a timeline that aligns with all of this and all of the needs of so many different stakeholders.
I'll definitely pass that along to Abby again.
All right, so again, we have before us a proposal to approve the plans. And I'm understanding that we're pretty much by consensus agreeing earliest to construct this would be 2022, but we'll revisit it in October once we know what the status of the current, we'll call it the pandemic, because that's what it is, and go from there. Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing?
Actually, what I was thinking was just approving the plans and then making a separate motion to revisit the timing,
Right.
say 5 or 6 months from now.
Yeah, I understand that, Susan, that's fine. So let's call the question, end the comment period at this point and call the question on approving the plans. From the committee members, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it's unanimous. And then we need a second motion to revisit construction scheduling. Susan said 5 to 6 months. I think October would be a better choice.
Okay.
5 to 6
Then-
months, I might get a shot, and I'm an old guy.
Could I suggest that we provide to the council a recommendation for bidding the project for construction to start no earlier than 2022?
Okay, yeah, that's fine, but we need a motion for that, don't we, Sean?
We should, yes, to get it to them. And then if we talk about it in fall, great.
There
I
was,
will make that motion.
Yeah, I'll second that motion that this be referred to Common Council with that recommendation.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Who was the opposition?
Dan, were you opposed or just late voting?
No, that was a late yes.
A late
Oh,
yes,
late,
okay.
yeah.
I had to
Okay.
get the mute button off.
Uh-huh.
See? Things you
We'll
never
let that
heard
go.
1 year ago.
All right, unanimous also. And Sean, make sure you get this in your agenda for October, huh?
Right.
Okay, anything else on this item? I don't think so. Do we move to item 3, which is Mayflower Drive and Hubbard Avenue reconstruction plan approval? Same process, I guess. We're looking for plan approval with this item, and then there's other things. So Sean, you want to introduce this as well?
Sure. Let me jump to the plans. I know that we have, at least I think that we have Terry with us tonight, Meyerhofer of MSA, who is our design consultant on this. I get the sense I'm talking over her right now. And then our engineering tech, Richard Weihert, is on the call. I see his name. And he's available as well, just in terms of an introduction, because I know we have a lot of citizen interest in the specific design elements of Mayflower Drive north of Maywood Avenue. I just want to overview with our process that we're here tonight to talk about, I'm sorry, brought up the wrong thing, the plan approval of the final design of the overall project, which is most of Hubbard Avenue east of Park Street and Violet Place, Orchid Lane, and Mayflower Drive from South Avenue all the way up to Columbus. So while I'm sure there will be a lot of discussion on part of that, the agenda item is the overall plan approval. In terms of process, while we're talking about design elements, I want to stress to all in attendance that this is not a public hearing, though the chair of the committee often invites public input because we do want to hear from the public on these things. There will be an opportunity, and in fact it's on tonight's agenda, to schedule a public hearing for more robust discussion and input about accessible elements, which includes sidewalk construction. So that's still coming up. If you feel like you know that you're not being adequately heard tonight, there's another opportunity coming. So I want to mention that. I would say too that one of the common refrains that I've been hearing as staff is a question of why would we consider adding sidewalk when it hasn't been there for a very long time? And I know I've shared with some, but maybe not all, that it's a routine question that staff asks with reconstruction of roads. How do we, to the best of our ability, bring things up to today's standards? Life has changed in the past 40 or 50 years, and these are good policy questions for staff to ask. These are policy questions for the Public Works Committee to get involved with and give recommendations on. And the council ultimately will determine through assessments whether or not something gets constructed and or assessed. So this isn't the final say, but we do plan approval for bidding purposes. I will add too that this set of drawings came in on Thursday. So there were previous plans that the committee had talked about that showed the addition of sidewalk in concept, but without road narrowing. And the Pedestrian Bicycle Transit Committee and Public Works Committee both asked our design consultant to go back and redraw the portion of plans of Mayflower Drive north of Maywood Avenue to narrow the street and construct the sidewalk with an eye toward trying to preserve as many trees as possible, the terrace trees out in the public right of way. And the consultant has done that. Terry's here. I think she's done a really nice job with her team. For the edification of the committee, we'll be coming back at a future meeting with an amendment for that extra service, but I don't think it'll be shocking in terms of the extra effort that it took. But I do want to just bring that to everyone's attention that that's not ready today. For everybody, the road was, well, you see it in the plan cross sections, 40 feet wide between curbs. The new design is 30 feet wide between curbs. So this narrowed the street by 10 feet to add a 7-foot grassy median and a 5-foot sidewalk on the west side of that road, with the result that the sidewalk is aligned more or less centered on where the current curb line is. So when you walk out there today and you see the concrete curb and gutter, envision that being about the middle of the sidewalk, if that makes sense. So with the design change, that preserves all of the trees, and I think that was an important consideration. I'm glad the committee gave that direction as a compromise, which minimizes the amount of impervious pavement. So we're putting more grass out into the right of way than there is right now. And preserves trees. It has a good feel for it. It separates pedestrian activity from vehicular activity, which is more in keeping with the city's policy guidance of promoting complete streets as ways for various types of users to get around. And one of the other design issues that this raises then with narrowing the street to 30 feet between curbs is whether the committee would like to continue parking, allowing on-street parking on both sides of that section of road, or restrict it to only one side of the road. The committee may remember that in 2006, we retooled our typical street cross sections to for local neighborhood roads that don't have a lot of traffic to continue allowing parking on both sides of fairly narrow streets. Especially when lightly parked. What you don't see is a line of cars parked on both sides of the street as a continuous sort of thing. And so it functions also as traffic calming then when you have parking on both sides, because drivers to navigate down the street may have to deviate a little bit from a preferred alignment. So it helps drivers be forced to pay attention. We have that in many of our traditional neighborhoods and have had for decades, and haven't had any traffic crash problems because of that. So it's a new type of design for us, but it's been effective. Much like the Parmenter Street drawings, I would say these are ready for final plan approval for bidding. Again, contingent on a small handful of really minor staff review comments. I don't know if the committee has seen anything before we dive into the Mayflower design issue just north of Maywood, but you might want to talk about that part first.
Sounds good. From the committee itself, any comments on the design documents themselves that you found?
Hi, Don, this is Carrie Scheffner. I just wanted to, I know this is in the agenda, Sean, but I just wanted to make sure that this was heard as well, that what we talked about last time was bidding the Mayflower section out is separate. And that's still what we're talking about, right? So that potentially we could defer the construction of that portion of the road, thinking that we would maybe sometime combine that with Columbus Drive.
Correct. And it was driven more by budget concerns from the opinion of probable construction cost to bid this section of Mayflower Drive as an alternate group. And so depending on how bids come back, that might help trigger whether or not we pursue construction now or later. And the city may decide, even if we could afford it, to pursue construction later. That's all still up in the air.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I also wanted to comment that thank you, MSA, for modifying these to save the trees. I know that was a major concern at the last meeting, and I think we did an excellent job of doing that. So, any other comments from committee members?
John,
Yes.
I was actually wondering, since we will be adding additional terrace, would there be possibilities of planting even more trees? Like we have tree-lined street, and since we both live in Middleton Hills, I relate to that better. But we have trees every so many feet up and down the street,
Sure.
between the sidewalk and the road. So we could actually add some trees.
We might have some opportunities, especially after we abandon. I don't know if you can see this reasonably well on the screen because everyone's screen's a different size, but we've got existing water main, existing sanitary sewer that meanders in and out. Now this water main will be abandoned, but what we don't do is plant trees within 10 feet of a sanitary sewer, storm sewer, water main. And so there may be a few opportunities. I was thinking of that too. We'll talk to the city forester certainly as to whether we can fit something in. For right now, our main goal was to try to preserve as many as possible of the existing terrace trees.
Okay.
Even behind the sidewalk, still in the public right of way, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. And this actually, because we've got some trees that are in the public right of way that could be causing a problem in terms of sanitary sewer. Is that correct?
Well, this is storm sewer. That's getting a little bit close to some of these trees. Oops.
Yeah, I see that.
Sometimes panning is harder than it needs to be on a PDF. This tree looks like it's maybe right on the property line, but then this one's out into the right of way. But again, the sidewalk will be over where the curb line is. You can kind of see these two gray lines running through the middle of this gray shaded area. So that's the difference of sidewalk there. And then it looks like up here, this is a private tree, again, close to the line, but on private property side, but far from where the sidewalk is proposed. So yeah, we've got storm sewer running through there and a sanitary lateral coming through here and a water lateral. So where we put trees, we don't want them to grow into other canopies, and we don't want them to grow into sewer or water mains.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I see Robert's hands up as well. Robert?
Mhm.
Thank you, Don. So if I understand this proposal, it's the street narrowing is all on one side of the street. Is that correct?
Yeah, because most of the curb and gutter over there is in good shape, rather than trying to split the difference, it's
Right.
just more cost effective to tear out the curb on one side and shift it over.
Sure. What happens to the right of way or easement or whatever you want to call it on, basically the yards are getting bigger on that side? Is that a way of looking at it?
I would say no.
Oh.
the way you phrased
Oh, that's
that.
right. Because no, you're right. Because you're right. The side, well, the way I think of it is, so my yard,
Mhm.
I live, near Stricker's Pond. I think of my yard going out to the street, but there's a sidewalk and there's a 5-foot, 4-foot, 5-foot terrace or something like that. And so I think of my yard going all the way out to the curb. Right? But here, we're basically putting new grass into where the street is now, aren't we?
By about 10 feet, right.
By about
Yep.
10 feet. So I'm just trying to understand how that works and what is homeowner property and what is city
Sure.
right away.
Let me, when I'm allowed to pan, let me pan. So, for instance, this thin gray line with a couple of little skips in it is a property line. That's the right-of-way line, and
Sure.
It doesn't change regardless of what we build in that right-of-way or where in the right-of-way we build it. So, ordinarily, we build a sidewalk near the property line. Here, we're not talking about doing that because we want to preserve some trees on the backside. Ordinarily, there would be a sidewalk constructed here,
Sure.
but we're choosing not to do that. Now, it does make it look like the effective yard is bigger, but that legal line doesn't move.
That's what I wanted to understand, and that was very clear. Thank you, Sean.
Okay.
I'll put my hand down now.
Before it gets tired.
All right. All right. Any other committee member discussions on the plans before we try and get a motion to approve or not approve?
I think, Don, there may be some citizens that may want to
Okay, sure.
provide some input, some advice. I know you've read a lot from what people have sent in. There's been a petition opposed. There have been several emails in favor of this narrowing and sidewalk. And so I know you have a lot of the background, but I think too, I know the committee's usually interested in allowing some discussion.
Sure. We can open it up to some discussion then before we do any motions.
Okay. If there are no other committee items on the rest of the plans, maybe let's get into Mayflower more.
Okay.
If anyone's interested to speak, if you could raise your hand, that would be helpful so we don't all jump in at once here. And again, the way to do that is on your screen, you'll see a participants button, and a submenu of participants is to raise hand. I see Ann Fisher.
Ann Fisher, yes.
So
Ann,
if
go
you
ahead.
unmute
You're still
yourself,
on
Ann.
mute. You've got to take
Well,
your.
someone has to be first, right?
There we go.
Right.
Go ahead.
All right. So I'm at 2312 Mayflower Drive, and my property is the property that Boulder Lane basically runs right into. We tee into that. It's quite a large front area that we have tended for close to 30 years, protecting the trees and spending thousands of dollars on protecting especially the old growth oak. The trees that you talked about that are between my property and my neighbors, the Allens, that black spruce tree would need to be removed, is my understanding, because that would be in the way of visibility for the sidewalk. I'm correct about that?
Remind me, and then which one is the
About where
spruce
your
tree?
hand is now, right there. Yep.
This here
So
is
there
a
are
spruce tree?
two, yep, there are two mature black spruce there that are very cascading. The big owl and bird habitat, and those would have to come down because I believe those would be in the way. And I recognize that that's not our personal property, that it's city owned, but nonetheless, that is a destruction of those trees. I have an old oak just a small way back from there, and I'm concerned about some of the reading I've done that describes sidewalk construction. You have to look at least a foot outside of the construction zone that will be disrupted, and then another 3 feet beyond that for mature tree roots. So that would affect potentially another oak tree there for me. Also over by my driveway, a similar problem. I think there's also an elm tree by those two black spruce that would be affected, and that's just talking about the trees there.
Could you pause there a second, Ann, and let me
Sure,
ask
absolutely.
Terry. Terry, you've had conversations with the city forester. What was the opinion of the city forester in terms of this design, building a sidewalk where there's already curb, affecting existing trees?
So when I went out there, the city forester was actually out there at the same time as me when we went to check out what this new design would do to the landscape. And he said that up to about 2 feet behind the existing back of curb for installation of the sidewalk would have no effect on the trees. And I believe there's an email that I can dig up where he followed up with an email saying that as well. So if you picture, kind of like Sean said, if you walk along the curb, so specifically the back of curb, if you picture the back of it, about 2.5 feet to the west of that curb is where the back of sidewalk will be. And after that, there's grading, and that grading limit is noted by the more heavy, bold, dashed line. And that grading is very minimal as far as fill goes. It's 0.1 feet to 0.4 feet in some areas, tops. And the 0.4 feet isn't getting close to the trees. So as far as the fill that's actually going to go up to the trees, that's also minimal.
Okay, so the forester is confident in this design in terms of saving trees.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
Terry,
I just wanted to be clear about that. Oh, sorry, Ann, go ahead.
That's what I was going to say. Terry, you and I were out there at the same time talking with the forester.
Yeah.
And he said that tree would have to come down because it would obstruct the sidewalk, as well as that elm tree that was there, and possibly the second large spruce. So unless something changed in your conversation.
In his follow-up email to the design team, that's not what he said.
Okay, because if you stand on that curb, you are touching my tree. The branches touch you. So how could they possibly put a sidewalk there without disturbing that tree? It can't be done.
I'll try to pull up the email from him right
Okay.
now.
I mean, I guess
of
that's
his
indicative
comments
of
to
my
us, but if he did say that to you, I did not hear it myself, so I apologize for that.
Well, and this is indicative of my concerns overall as these plans have unfolded. I know many of you are in receipt of emails and maybe phone calls too that I've reached out to people, city planners, as well as some of our elected officials. And, my concern from the start was a lack of involvement of citizens. I know Rich shared with me that he wasn't able to contact citizens in a way that he normally would. I think had that happened, we would be in a different place because we could have looked at alternatives that don't significantly disrupt what we consider our precious Saks Woods neighborhood. And, you know, as somebody who decided to, you know, take charge of the petition, what I have overwhelmingly heard from over 100 neighbors is we don't want to see our street narrowed. We don't want to see sidewalks installed. For over 60 years, we've been able to function safely in a neighborhood that we appreciate and love and take care of. We view this as Saks Woods. This is a unique neighborhood, and I think that we have a responsibility to preserve the special character here. As I'm looking over the comprehensive plan, I have to balance the things of complete streets, which does not describe every place without a street or without a sidewalk gets a sidewalk. In fact, it calls for using, you know, some input from neighbors and whoever to create designs that are more practical, that fit the neighborhood. It also calls for us to preserve and protect and enhance our natural environment. We see ourselves as a direct gateway to the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. And I'm not alone. You know, this is not just 4 properties who stand to lose front gardens and beautiful green areas. This is the people who walk here daily. And I know that I'm not saying 100% of everybody's on board with this, but over 100 people did sign a petition, or near 100 people signed a petition saying, please don't do this. I just can't say it enough that this is Saks Woods. And for longtime residents, especially our longtime residents, this is a special place. It's a place that we realized didn't have sidewalks when we moved in, and we've navigated it safely. It's not an arterial street, it's a local street. And I just can't say that often enough. It's been very difficult talking to some neighbors who insist that there will be no destruction of green space and there will be no destruction of trees. I don't believe that for a minute. And I don't think that this committee can honestly say that's true. And lastly, I will say this. It's also very upsetting to me that we see a proposal like this that 1 year ago, for the exact same reasons, the pedestrian bike transit group said, yeah, let's not put sidewalks into Wood Road. Let's not do that near Cromway across the street there. So there are other areas I know in the city where decisions are made not to put in sidewalks. And I would say this is another one of those areas where we do not need to have that unnecessary construction that is disruptive to our environment.
I'd like to provide the clarification. I did find what I heard from the site visit of the city forester. I did not hear that any trees would need to come down with this proposed design. He said that the spruce tree at 2312 Mayflower, which is the one you're referring to, I believe, would need to be clearance pruned to avoid conflict with the sidewalk, but none are to be removed as part of the plan, as far as I'm aware.
But all the front gardens would come out.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And next would be David's iPhone. I'm not sure who David is, but go ahead.
Could you, for my minutes, David, give me your name?
You're still, there you go. You're not on mute anymore. David, can you hear us?
May have stepped away for a minute. David's iPhone, are you wishing to speak? I think we'll lower his hand and move on.
JFOZ.
Could you provide it?
Hi. Yeah, that's me. My name is Anna Fosdick, and I have weighed in support of the proposal with a number of next door postings. Basically, you know, just any basic research into the value of sidewalks to a community yields a substantial amount of data that I have compiled and posted to that site. it's not ambiguous at all. There's a significant safety increase, which is absolutely necessary to our community. We have a very steep hill right by where I live, which is the corner of Pinta Court and Columbus, where it's almost a blind spot, where you almost cannot see a car until it's almost right on you there from really either side. And then as you come down the hill, there's a pretty sharp turn to where Columbus turns into Mayflower. And at that turn, a lot of cars that are speeding through there from Century Avenue, trying to get up to University Avenue or vice versa, they have accelerated to get up that hill. They tend to fly over that hill. They might realize there's a pedestrian on the side. It's hard to say, but you're in the street as a pedestrian in that area. And then when you are on Mayflower, you are pretty much in harm's way because some of these drivers don't realize that they need to adjust their car because there's a significant turn. And as you continue down Mayflower,
Can you guys hear me? This is Dave Ruley. I'm so sorry. I'd like to speak after Anna. I'm sorry, Anna. I just got my mute unmuted. Thank you.
Oh, sure, sure.
And if you would put your hand back up, David, you can get back in the queue.
Okay.
Sure. So, so there's also significant curves in those roadways. We have a lot of school children walking through this neighborhood, not so much this year because of course there's the virtual learning, you know, but there's a lot of school children both from this neighborhood and also from really across Branch Street that come up from those areas on you know, really Maywood area and whatnot, who walk through and cut through Parisi Park. And you know, there are times of the day there's more traffic than other times. But I have found even if there's just one car coming across on the road there, you can feel really threatened. You can, you know, sometimes you have to hop into somebody's yard, you have to hop into their driveway to avoid being hit. And, you know, I'm a pretty capable adult. I really am not texting while I'm walking. I'm not listening to music, you know, and I feel threatened. So how do young children navigate that? How do adolescents navigate that? So I really feel like there are significant safety issues, and the research that I found overwhelmingly from the National Transportation Safety Board and other highly reputable traffic safety researchers indicate that a sidewalk really improves the chances of a pedestrian you know, walking to where they need to be safely. So that's my primary consideration. But on top of that, you know, there's overwhelming evidence that sidewalks enhance property values. We have had assurances. I've spoken to alderpersons myself who have specifically told me there's no plan to remove trees. And so when I drive through my neighborhood and I see 4 different huge signs that say save the trees, I really feel like there's something disingenuous about how this petition has been put out there to people. There was somebody who posted to the site, you know, the Nextdoor site where this has all been kind of argued out, that she actually changed her mind on the petition signing because she started to realize that it wasn't as it had been promoted. So So I think that people are, of course, entitled to their opinions. And, you know, there's some people who are less concerned about safety. They don't have young children, or they just, you know, really don't think these issues exist. You know, but let's, you know, have the conversation be above board and not pretend like this is about saving trees and have this huge campaign that is so misleading, that says save trees all across the neighborhoods. You know, when we are receiving assurances from the city again tonight, that is not the case at all. So I really, I feel like it's important to look at all these variables. As far as the intent of the framers of, of Saks Woods, they did create an overly broad street that I think there's people who have made a pretty compelling case that there was an intention to put sidewalks in, but all the same, you know, times have changed. We do not have the same traffic levels we had in the 1960s when Saks Woods really came into fruition. And, you know, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, a lot of people are on cell phones. We have people cutting through, traffic increases all the time. We need a safe environment above all. And I think there, you know, we can certainly continue to have a civil discussion and look at the real facts on this. You know, let's not get people all fired up about signing a petition to save our trees when that isn't at all what's on the table. So thanks so much for taking comments, and I'm happy to stay on that site. I probably spent, you know, about 10 hours this weekend, you know, not being with my family because I feel so passionate about the need to live in a safe neighborhood, and, you know, one that is walkable, and walkable not just for able-bodied adults, but also for the children and the many children who pass through this neighborhood every day on their way to and from school.
Great. Thanks, Anna.
Yeah.
David did find his mute button. He wanted to come on next, so we'll let David speak.
Hello, everyone. I appreciate you taking my my comments as well here tonight, as this is a pretty serious issue. I live on the property that is an adjunct to the actual walkway that goes into Prezy Park on Mayflower. So I'm 2 doors down towards that entrance from Ann Fisher. And, you know, nobody really wants sidewalks. And my big question is, you know, we had kind of a precedent set over on Wood Lane. And I'm wondering, like, from everybody on the committee, what happened there? How was that automatically reversed for all that construction that went on this summer?
Sean, I'll let you address that.
Sure, I don't know. We look at each street individually. So we drew up, I think, 4 different alternatives for how to get some sort of sidewalk connectivity along Wood Road.
Mm-hmm.
All of them were going to affect trees in one way or another on one side or the other, even if we narrowed the road and tried constructing sidewalk.
Because I was going to say, I mean, with the original construction of that neighborhood that we're a part of as well, those streets are the same width.
I don't even know if that one's as wide as this one. I'm not looking at it. Does one street someplace in the city not have sidewalk? Does that mean no street anywhere in the city should have sidewalk? I don't look at life that way. What I look at as a designer, as a city engineer, is there a reasonable opportunity to separate pedestrian traffic from vehicular traffic? And in this case, I didn't think of it but I'm glad somebody did, to think, well, could we narrow this road, build a sidewalk well out into the right of way and preserve trees? And that's what's here tonight.
Sure, sure. And I understand that. And I guess one of the other things that I respect Anna's comments as well. I've lived at this residence for over 10 years now, and we've never had an accident.
Mm-hmm.
There's never been anything along those lines, even close. And maybe that's just, looking into the future or hearsay or that or anything else in between. But there's never been any issues of a safety negligence or anything from anyone here. And very rarely, if a car does try to cut through, it's at 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning when there's nobody on the streets at all. And I think that could be attested to the number of people that signed the petitions for putting, for wanting to try to alleviate these sidewalks being put in. So I just want to make some comments. My other one is, how much cost is going to be incurred to each one of these residences on this street to put in 100 feet of sidewalk?
I don't have the costs yet. Typically for brand new sidewalk that's never existed before, our assessment policy is to assess 100% of the construction costs. It's typically been in the ballpark of $5 to $7 per square foot, give or take. And our policy says that where sidewalk exists and will exist on only one side of the street, the assessments are split to the properties also across the street.
Okay. Well,
so
there would be there wouldn't be any sidewalks put in across the street from us.
We're not contemplating,
side, right?
We're not contemplating that, correct?
Correct. Okay. And I understand why that's not being contemplated with the hill coming down and people crossing there, which makes sense. But, and again, when I bought my house, I didn't think that this would be an issue that I would be incurring extra costs of thousands of dollars in order to put in a sidewalk in my front yard that I don't want. And maybe these, bullet points are invalid, but at the same time, that's a lot to ask for from people who are already trying to take care of their mature trees, trying to have everything taken care of, which is thousands of dollars on top of it as well. And now I'm going to be in the hole for who knows how much money, since we're not exactly sure, just in order to put sidewalks in my front yard that I don't want.
Right, and the cost part is part of what we'll have that public hearing for, the assessment public hearing in,
fair enough.
Well, it's down the agenda here tonight, but we're proposing setting that in late February.
Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate everyone's time. I just wanted to make those points. Obviously, there's a number of people in our neighborhood that really do not want to see Saxwoods change in this direction. And I think if you go up and down our streets along Columbus and Mayflower and everywhere else, that you're going to see a number of people that are just adamantly opposed to having this happen. So thank you again for your time. I hope everyone has a great night.
I appreciate that. I would add too, I think we probably wouldn't be considering this even as strongly if there weren't a park trailhead right here. So I think part of what we're looking at is we know kids are going to be up and down this street should they be up and down a sidewalk. So
right, and they are along Wood Lane too. That's 2 blocks closer to a major elementary school than where we're at right now. So, there's a lot of different views to that.
Yeah,
but I agree.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks again for your time, and I wish everybody a good night.
Okay. Right now, we've got 3 people with their hands raised, and I think we may limit it to that because I think we're going to be hearing a lot of the same discussions back and forth. But then next on the agenda is Kate Kalin, or next on the list, Kate Kalin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure.
Yes.
Hi, I'll keep it brief because I know we're getting late here. I have an 18-month-old son, and I am pregnant and have a newborn due in February. And my son is spirited, and he likes to run and doesn't always want to hold my hand. So I feel very nervous about not having sidewalks. I do feel like it's a significant safety concern. And I believe we've been really lucky in this neighborhood that there haven't been any accidents. So I just want to put out my support for having the sidewalks. I am off of Mayflower or Columbus Drive and Pinta. I'm in Pinta Court. That big hill is very scary. I'm concerned for my children when I have them in strollers, when I have them walk to school, when I walk with them to school, to the park. And in addition to that, I feel like that if we're going to say we're the good neighbor city, we need to have sidewalks in order to be open to differently abled and diverse populations and for everybody to be able to access our neighborhood. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Next would be Lindsay Whitlock.
Hi, I'm also going to keep it brief. I basically just want to second everything Kate said. I live on the corner of Maywood and Mayflower, so kind of right across the street from where this proposed sidewalk is. And I have two daughters who are elementary school age who have a best friend right on Boulder Lane. So they walk up and down this street all the time, and they usually don't use the sidewalk on the other side because they can kind of like walk across the street there. And so they just kind of run out in the street. And, you know, it isn't a high traffic street, but cars do come out a lot. And there are many times where I've had to like go down and walk them when I wouldn't if there was a sidewalk. And I know a lot of the parents who are, who live in this area, and I've spoken to a lot of them since the sidewalk issue came up. And maybe it's because I'm a younger person with kids and I'm speaking to a lot of people who are more in my demographic, but I do hear so much support for this sidewalk. And I just wanted to, share that experience, that, yeah, we'd be really excited about it. And I just want to thank everyone for this new plan that also narrows the street. And I also appreciate that this sidewalk would create kind of a loop through the park. I know it's a small thing, but you know, kids love to like bike and go around in loops, if that makes sense. And so they can kind of just go around, bike through the park and keep going around again. So anyway, I'm really enthusiastic about the new plan. I really like it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And then Ellie Berry.
Yes, I'm on Ellie Berry's computer. My name is Todd Berry, her dad. I don't have a computer with a microphone. I live on Columbus Drive at the top of the hill. Most of the people that have spoken in favor of the walks live near me, but don't live on Columbus Drive. And I am presuming that Columbus Drive is next. I would like to echo what Ann Fisher said. This issue has come up off and on for the last 30 years. Every time it comes up, the neighbors unanimously or near unanimously oppose it, and the plan is put away for another 10 years. There's no question in my mind that the vast majority, probably a ratio of 30 or 40 to 1, oppose this. And not just because of trees, we just don't want the walks. And the precedent has been set for the last 60 years. We bought in this neighborhood, we understood what was going on, and everybody has pretty much been of the same mind for the last 50 to 60 years. So if we're looking at policy, the established policy is no walks on these streets. I will lose trees. There is no question. I will lose a crabapple, 3 cherries, and 3 conifers. If you would put dollar values on those, to replace them. Each one would come in the hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. I would lose 30 feet, linear feet of garden, which incidentally Anna Fosdick enjoys every day. So I will lose value and I will lose property value. If safety is an issue, there's a much cheaper and more rational way to do this. And Madison shows the way, and even Middleton shows the way, and that is speed bumps. And at the top of the hill, a roundabout that slows the traffic without all the added construction costs to the individual owners. I might add that if the question is safe walking, we are the ones that walk it and we're having no problem. But more importantly, we have Pheasant Branch Creek right behind us. There is a paved walk through there, which, by the way, the neighborhood almost unanimously, if not unanimously, opposed then 10 years ago, and we were ignored. But you can walk to Cromrie and you can walk to the high schools on the Pheasant Branch Creek path. So again, to put this in context, although you've heard more people in favor of the walks, you've probably heard from the 3 or 4 people that support it and not from the 100 that don't support the walks. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. I see that Jared just rang in after I closed it, but we'll let Jared talk, but he'll be the last one so we can move on.
Hi, Don. Thank you. Jared Browning here. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Yes. So I'm a resident on 2416 Mayflower Drive. And, you know, I would like also on behalf of my wife, and we've lived here nearly 20 years. We've raised young children here that have walked successfully to Sauk Trail, to Cromley, and Middleton High School. And I would also make the case, like Ann and Todd Berry, my neighbor, and David for that matter, I don't support putting these sidewalks in. Number one, from an aesthetic and character perspective, inevitably this sidewalk is going to continue in the future up the Columbus direction. We would lose a number of very old growth trees, trees that are, you know, topping out at, you know, 180 to 200 years old. And I think it does change the character of the neighborhood. As David mentioned, he's been here 10 years, we've been here 20 years. We've never experienced any kind of incident, even with young kids, and our kids are now teenagers, but have walked to school with their friends and neighbors without issue. And I'm not terribly interested in paying a special assessment to support this project for what it does to diminish the overall aesthetics of Sachs Woods. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Sean, you want to go back through again what we're trying to end up with this evening on this item? Sean?
You're on mute, Sean. Yep.
Did we lose Sean?
No, rookie. I've only been doing this a year now. No, I was just trying to say, sorry, Don, I had a conversation earlier today with Dick Blaschke, who was only able to call in by phone. And so I don't know if he's in as one of the phone numbers and or wanted to speak, but I know he was not able to connect with a computer or tablet or anything like that, just a phone. So he wouldn't be able to raise his hand if he did want to.
Okay. There's several people on here with phones, but no names. So.
Right, and I don't even know what the phone's capabilities are. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think what we wanted to know is, are these plans for the whole project ready for bidding, conditional upon a few minor corrections that staff have been in discussion with Terry about? enough to get bids, and we'll come back later with proposed assessment costs and a public hearing at that time to be able to make a better informed decision.
Okay. So hearing that, is there a motion or?
I'll
This is
make a
Carl. I
motion.
make a motion to approve the plans.
Okay, then I'll second it. This is Dan.
Okay. Who made the motion? I didn't see.
Carl.
Carl, okay. All right, further discussion? Again, motion to proceed with the plans with bidding and bidding the Mayflower work as an alternate due to budget constraints and concerns. And following that, there will be another public hearing dealing with this project and assessing costs for improvements, etc. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4, Mayflower Drive and Hubbard Avenue reconstruction resolution declaring intent to assess cost of improvement.
Right, so as all of our reconstruction projects that have elements that are accessible per policy, we follow this state process for assessments, which begins with the council's direction to the city engineer to prepare a report. We don't have costs yet, but now that we have final plans, we have enough information to begin preparation of the report, which then we make publicly available, and we send letters and publish a legal notice informing people of the date of a public hearing to discuss it with the committee. So this just starts that process.
Okay.
This is Robert. I would recommend that we recommend to Finance and Common Council approval of this resolution.
This is Carrie Scheffner. I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. All opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Mayflower and Hubbard Avenue reconstruction set date for public hearing. You suggested February 22nd at our 6:30 meeting. Is that
Right,
correct?
and I think that was just in the staff comments up here, but just looking ahead, because there are notice requirements between 10 and 40 days before the public hearing, Terry looked at an overall project timeline and recommended February 22nd.
Okay. We need a motion to accept that as the date.
This is Robert. I would make that motion.
This is Carl. I second.
Any further discussion? Anybody going to be on vacation? Nobody's leaving their houses, so.
Yeah, right.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Item number 6, Pleasant View Road, recommendation for assessments.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, you know, we're working with the city of Madison to redesign Pleasant View Road as a 4-lane divided facility, and the town of Middleton properties get involved, both opposite the city of Madison and opposite the city of Middleton. The city of Madison has an existing intergovernmental agreement with the town of Middleton regarding assessments. So my understanding is that is already set. The city of Middleton recently sent to the town of Middleton an intergovernmental agreement that's proposed but not adopted yet. So staff is recommending that just to keep all property owner assessments equal, especially in the town of Middleton, whether they're across from Madison or the city of Middleton, to get on the same footing with the city of Madison, if that makes sense. So this isn't purely city of Middleton policy. But that said, most of it is consistent with what city of Middleton typically does. So for new sidewalk, 100%, that's consistent with all of our projects. New curb and gutter, not including medians, this is our policy. New driveway aprons versus replacement driveway aprons at 100% versus 50%. That's consistent with our policy. Streetlights, we haven't really gotten into in the past. We have talked about it in the Orchid Heights neighborhood where no streetlights were initially constructed. We talked about that as being a special assessment project, but it never happened. And the big one that Madison staff tells me they can't change, and it's not written in their policy, but they said it's such standard practice they're going to write it into their policy, is to charge the costs of an extra 4 feet of lane width on each side of the road. We haven't done that typically. In some ways, I can see the rationale that we have a 20 to 24 foot ribbon of asphalt out there, and our standard street width for residential is, or at least was, 36 feet of asphalt. So we're in the ballpark of 12 to 14 feet narrower than a local road. So assessing 8 of those 12 feet doesn't seem out of line. But Madison is set at 4 feet, period. Not up to the width of a standard class road. So we as staff, again, are just recommending going with that, not assessing the bike path, just sidewalks, but adding in 4 feet of additional lane width just to treat everybody fairly.
This is Robert. That rationale makes sense to me, and I would make a motion to recommend that to Common Council.
Okay, and Finance Committee, I'm assuming.
If I must, yes.
Yeah, and I think as staff, we'd add to that a recommendation that if we can't reach agreement with the town of Middleton on an intergovernmental agreement, to agree to defer those town property assessments so that when and if and when they annex into the city of Middleton, we'll charge the assessments plus interest at that time.
Okay, I will add that into my motion.
Okay, thanks.
We're waiting for a second. If there.
This is Dan. I'll second the motion, but I do have a comment.
Sure, go ahead.
Just, are we setting any, if we make an adjustment to what we would normally assess, I think we have good reason for it because it's part of a larger project and we're harmonizing among several municipalities. We don't leave ourselves open to something later on where another project would be asking for a similar reduction or whatever.
Realistically,
we aren't changing a precedent here or anything, are we?
It's a great question, and I don't know the answer to it. If anything, we're proposing here deviating from our policy by adding, not subtracting. So if anybody asks to pay more in the future,
okay,
we'll need to have a side discussion. But I think the biggest instance I can think of where we, as the city of Middleton, deviated from our standard policy for assessments on a past project was when we agreed with the city of Madison on Old Middleton Road to assess half the cost of sidewalks across the street where it would only exist on one side. That was not part of our policy at the time. It is now.
Okay. I still second this.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Right.
Next is a task order for engineering services with Strand Associates for the amount of $28,700 for the rehabilitation of well number 3. And what this is, I'm guessing, is bidding process, soliciting proposals, and then construction phase engineering services.
Right. So this is turnkey service. Ordinarily with a project, we'll split off design and construction, but this includes all of it. With Strand Associates to work with. I see Dave Sarbacher is on the call with available to answer any specific questions, but it's consistent with other recent well rehabilitation projects.
Straightforward.
It does seem rather straightforward. Remind me, where is well number 3?
Well 3 is up by the top of the quarry, if you will.
Okay.
There's a little park up there on Hillcrest.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'm never going to say we shouldn't rehabilitate a well, so I would make a motion to recommend this to Finance and Common Council to approve this.
This is Carrie. I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would add just a note of thanks to Dave Sarbacher for doing some long-term planning on this to try to make sure that we're consistently keeping our well rehab on schedule with a frequency that is sensitive to the budget and the needs of the wells. That's really nice.
Dave, ask for that in writing from Sean.
I'll delete this recording soon.
I don't use recording, so yeah.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. And then all we have left is adjournment.
I'll
Move to
adjournment.
adjourn. This is Dan. Sorry,
I'm
Corey.
counting it as Carrie.
Okay.
Carrie Dan moved.
Well, I will second. This is Dan.
I was going to give you a close second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, good meeting. See you all in a couple of weeks.
And thanks to everyone who participated in this call. It's
Yeah.
tough topics, and we'll have continued discussions going forward.
Yeah, but I was very pleased with the hand raising and the civil discussion. That's good input.
Worked out well. I actually found my hand raising thing, so that was a good deal.
Thank you all, and have a good evening.
Good night.
Good
night.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.